Welcome to another edition of Thought Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, life, and all points in between. Today, welcoming Todd Dunn, CEO of Accuryn Medical.
Mhm,
And I think this is what I love about this show is we get thought leaders from
mm,
all different industries. And,
mhm,
uh, I'm really excited to talk to Todd about healthcare. That's something that I love talking about.
mhm,
And, it's like right up there with education for me. And it's such a important part of everybody's life, obviously. And
mhm,
today, I think what's great is we're going to talk about healthcare transformation and how much it
mhm,
is needed and what should be encapsulated in it. So we're going to talk about how to drive effective healthcare transformation. Todd, CEO of Accuryn
mm,
Medical, spent more than 15 years driving innovation transformation across the healthcare industry. Todd, why don't you give us
mm.
a little bit, tell us your personal story and what you're
Mm.
doing at Accuryn.
Wow. Thanks for the dialogue, first of all, Greg. We connected in a very unique way on LinkedIn, which is related to the health of our parents. My story, I really got my degree in supply chain management.
Ah,
Interesting, right? Yeah, right down your manufacturing line.
right.
And the one thing I learned working for Cisco and Siemens and GE in operational supply chain roles is the necessity of a system. And when a lot of us think about MRP systems, when we think about manufacturing and the planning and the building, and it really got ingrained in my mind, not only in grad school at Michigan State, but at Cisco to think about the power of a system. And when I was at GE, I was actually on the software side of GE Healthcare. Of course, we had Six Sigma, right? And I was starting to dive into this innovation thing back in 2009 because my good friend Roy Rosen led Intuit's Design for Delight program.
Mm.
And I thought, man, people complain about healthcare software all the time, but they love Intuit stuff. What are we missing? And so I had the opportunity to start learning from him and all the great minds, from Clay Christensen and others. And at GE, I had an interesting opportunity, Greg, where they were starting this program. Her name's Beth Comstock. She was the chief marketing officer of innovation. So I raised my hand and I said, hey, I want to be part of this. So I volunteered to have a second job, really. And what GE was doing eventually became GE Fastworks. So for those of us who are very early, and fundamentally what it is and what we were trying to design is a system of language, tools, and methods for innovation, just like you have language, tools, and methods for manufacturing. And so that's really me. I really love creating systems that help people thrive and make great decisions. And whether it's healthcare or manufacturing, I'm just a big believer that people are amazing. And if you have bad systems, you inhibit their ability to be amazing. So when I think about transformation, I actually think about innovation as the verb and transformation as the noun or adjective. That's me. Been married to Wendy for over 30 years and I have three wonderful kids.
Well, that's awesome. And tell us a little bit about Accuryn.
Mm. I think the best way to explain it is if you've ever been in an ICU and you've seen monitors that have digitized the vital signs of the heart and the lungs. We've done the same for the kidneys, but the reason that that's really interesting is because today the way that clinical teams know if your kidneys are in distress is through a blood test called a serum creatinine test. Well, a lot of people don't know that your kidneys already have to be in distress for creatinine to show up in your blood. As a matter of fact, you're almost down a whole kidney.
Ooh.
So it's this retrospective, like, oh, you had a wreck, and blood tells you. And the other way of knowing if your kidneys are in distress are with urine, your fluid output. The crazy thing about that, nobody believes me when I tell them this, but it's truth. we still use a gravity fed catheter that Bard started marketing in 1936. It's fundamentally still gravity fed. So, what we've done, and I really think the parallels like what's been done with monitors and catheters for the heart and lungs, we've done the same for the kidney with a monitor and really intelligent automated drain line clearance catheters. And why do we do that? If we can give your clinical teams an early indication of distress through reliable data against a global standard, they can take the type of care of you that they went to medical school or nursing school to do. And then it's better off for the patient and it's better off for the hospital system. So the
And
little thing is acute kidney injury. Nobody knows this. 3.2 million times last year in the country, and CMS has now declared it a hospital harm. So we help prevent the increasing deterioration of your kidney performance.
and tell me a little bit more about why that matters to get just that much earlier of a diagnosis.
It's, I'll go back to the monitor of your heart. If it starts seeing a pattern of distress immediately, the clinical teams can interact early. And an intensivist told me the other day one of the most insightful things I've heard in a long time. He said, Todd, the kidneys are the mirror to the patient's health in the ICU. Some call their kidneys the canary of the body.
Oh,
They're
wow.
sensitive. And so if they get under distress and you can get a half a day ahead of when blood would tell you or even longer, the clinical teams can do what they know how to do to manage your fluid status. Because if your kidneys get in distress, it puts more pressure on your heart and then your lungs. So think about a heart patient that's had a coronary artery bypass graft. If their kidneys get in distress and their heart's already weak, the earlier you know of distress, the better off you are.
Okay, thanks for that. Um, I want to go back to the systems and I want to
Yeah.
pivot a little bit to the healthcare. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin Badger, Madison
Yeah.
grad.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman by the name of Bo Ryan who led our basketball team to the Final Four title game, couple back-to-back years. And Bo was a big fanatic about
Mm.
systems,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
he would do the same practice
Mm-hmm.
every day.
Mm-hmm.
This was part of his system.
Mm-hmm.
And, they would run the same practice, same drills, and he did it year in and year out. And he was a big proponent of you get in my system and we're
Mm-hmm.
going to win 75% of the games. And he did
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
And no matter what the talent was. So I really believe that, especially for me in marketing, there's so many shiny objects out there. If we
Yeah.
have a good system, and I
Mm-hmm.
can guarantee we can get you business leads, whatever you need, traffic, 75% of the time, man, I'm going to stick to that. I'll test other
Absolutely.
things, but I'll stick to that.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, Todd, what do you see for healthcare that
Mm.
isn't a system now and maybe needs to be as we transform?
Okay. Because I was in a role, I'll be candid about this. I think most innovation that is discussed in the healthcare industry is aspirational and doesn't follow the scientific method, meaning it's so assumption driven, but they forget to push it through the scientific method. And the reason that I say that is medicine is built on language, tools, and methods around the scientific method. And you pretty much start in medicine discovery with I believe. You have to admit you believe it, but you don't know it. And so I think the systems that drive innovation in healthcare are missing because I know so many different healthcare systems. And if you ask them, hey, pretend I'm from Missouri and just show me your innovation system or your transformation models for your company, just show me in writing. Those are very hard to produce in a lot of organizations. And I'm not being critical. I think the reason that is it's often mistaken that innovation is creativity or that it's the smart person over there with a black turtleneck on. And so I think just like we have standard language for stat means right now, or certain types of things in healthcare. I think systems need hospital systems, corporations that innovate for hospital systems need documented ways of doing this to remove the waste and to invalidate bad assumptions very quickly.
So tell me about a little bit more, if you can
Mm.
elaborate on that. What are they doing
Mhm.
wrong right now? Eh,
Investing time and money on assumptions.
Yeah, yeah. Explain that to me a little bit more.
May I give you an example that may serve us even better?
That's exactly what I was fishing for.
It wanted where I used to work. Hand hygiene was a craze topic back in 13, 14. And a nurse came to the innovation team that I eventually was able to lead, said, "Hey, we need a watch or something to remind us to wash our hands." So, what do you think the engineers did? Built a watch.
Ah,
And so, spent a lot of time. And by the way, you talk about a smart watch, Greg. It knew when you walked in the room, it knew if you moved your hands long enough, and a green light would go off on the watch. All these cool things about the watch. And because I got very involved with Steve Blank and the group in the lean startup movement, there's a guy named Eric Reese who came up with this concept called a leap of faith assumption. And we got to know Eric at GE. He helped us in the early days of FastWorks.
oh, really? Wow, cool.
Yeah, he's great. Eric's just a fantastic thinker. We were all sitting around one day in this meeting about this watch, and it was really bothering me. And I said, "Hey guys, what has to hold true for the watch to deliver value?" And you'd hear, "Oh, it has to be waterproof, or it has to tell time, or it has to, read when you're in the room." I was like, I don't know that that's really what has to happen. And so we kept going through this. And one of the really smart guys over in the corner said, "Somebody has to wear it." And I said, "Exactly. So did we have to buy or build a watch?" Your leap of faith assumption is they'll wear the watch. Did you have to build the watch to find out if they'll wear the watch? And the answer to that is no. In the second, we'll talk about the contrast between a minimal viable product and a minimal learning experiment. And
Hmm.
so, because everyone was crazed on the MVP concept, right?
Yeah,
They just rode the train out of town.
yeah.
So I said, okay, well, why don't we just walk the halls of the hospital and have nurses show us their wrists? That's the first question. The second one is, what would prevent you from wearing a watch?
Hmm.
In an OR, in some of the severe ICUs where germs are an even bigger problem, you can't wear one. So not only did we have assumptions that they would wear one, they had assumptions that they could wear one.
Ah, wow.
And the reason that I mentioned that is there was this craze of an MVP. There were these assumptions that we never documented until after the fact. Okay. And then when we ran the minimal learning experiment to test the major assumption, we completely invalidated the assumption. Then the third question is, will the administrator of the hospital buy a watch for 3,000 nurses? And so we just sat down with David and we said, "Hey," and he's like, "Never." And I said, "Okay." And so we killed the project in 2 weeks that had been going for a year. But
Wow.
the reason that I mentioned that is that the reason that the assumptions weren't documented is because we didn't have a system for documenting them. And so Alex Osterwalder built this wonderful business model canvas, and I love using Alex's tools. Just get in a room with a tool of some sort with your team and do what I call an assumption burst. Isn't that the scientific method, though? We believe that Greg and Todd can wear a watch. And to test that, we're going to build a watch. We're going to walk the halls and look at wrists and ask questions. And these are the three questions we're going to ask. And we're right if everyone wears a watch above it. We're wrong if. And I think that the assumption burst within a tool makes it safe for people to say, I could be wrong, but I'm willing to be wrong. And it's safe to be wrong. And so that's what I think we're missing is we have great ideas, but we fail to interrogate them through an assumption burst. And we went to the hospital, right? In a building that's across the way, you can assume all you want. But it's what I call the three C's of design disease: conference rooms, conference calls, and cubes. And the truth serum happens in the context of where the problem is. So, anyway, that's my thinking around why a system is so important, because we wouldn't have wasted 6 to 9 months and a lot of money on building a watch. And then think about the team, right? They built a watch, and you got to come back to them and say, you just wasted 9 months on an assumption. How do they
Right.
feel? That's not that's not good for people, because then they don't want to try again. Right? So
There's a great saying in marketing whenever, and it's funny you mentioned the guy with the black turtleneck, that everybody looks to him or they look to the
yeah.
CEO
Hmm.
to make, for the big idea or the approval.
Hmm.
But the way to shut down a lot of the like some harebrained ideas, because there are a few of
Hmm.
those floating around, is to say you should test that. And I think
I love that statement.
what you just said in terms of what was that? The learning experiment, the
Minimal learning experiments.
minimal
So,
learning experiment.
yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, I really love that approach.
So you think about that, you think, okay, what's the easiest way that I can learn the critical assumption? And you know this, especially marketing, you know this. We have so many assumptions about someone's behavior. We believe they're going to wear the watch. That's a behavior. How could I visualize that? Where could I see that happen? How could I test that if that would happen? And I think sometimes we just need to pause, because everybody wants innovation to be fast,
Yeah.
but only the customer gets to determine if it's actually transformative for them, not us. And so I love that. Test that idea.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
give us what can you tell us what they came up with instead of the watch?
Well, we didn't solve it immediately. I'll tell you the contrast to it. So there's, the book by Joseph Grenny and David Maxfield, Influencer or Difficult Conversations, pretty popular books.
No.
Back a long time ago, they did work with Spectrum Health in Michigan. And what they discovered was really interesting. They discovered that the social connection to what mattered to the clinicians is how you solve hand hygiene. So let's say my daughter, who's going to be a doctor, walks in the room and she's in a hurry. She just came out of the OR, whatever. The people in the room would say, Dr. Dunn, thank you for remembering to wash your hands. Even if she had not washed her hands, or if she walked past the sink, Dr. Dunn, thank you for remembering to wash your hands. A kind, gentle nudge that reassured the patient things were good and reminded someone who's just in a fury of a hurry to slow down. So they washed hands. The other thing they did is they went out and interviewed people who actually had been infected by germs that commonly walk, carry on the hands, and had those patients tell their stories. And in some of their in services, they would play those videos.
Ooh,
Their hand hygiene adherence went over 95% and sustained itself.
wow.
And the reason that I bring that up is we often believe that we have the prescription to progress without participating in the problem. And innovators need to diagnose before they prescribe. Isn't that what we do in medicine anyway? And so I think it's just a fundamental of making innovation an effective behavior so that you can drive the transformation that the customer wants. So we didn't build a watch, we didn't buy a watch, we didn't buy a band. That those just have not shown to be super effective.
What I love about this is you're getting to behavior before you're getting to building. And
Oh,
I
good.
mean, I think that's so critical, because what do we do here in our capitalist society? Especially we like to build and sell stuff,
Hmm.
you know, and maybe there would have been a product, maybe you would have discovered that, but in this case, it was just a behavior change. So
Mm.
good, get that out of the way so you can go
Yeah.
on to what you do need to build.
Spend your time very effectively because healthcare has such a low margin business and it has to be risk averse for all the right reasons. It, I like baseball in the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. Everybody forgets. I think that organization went bankrupt twice. And so that assumption, if you build it, they will come, just doesn't work. And I had the opportunity, actually, I have to give credit, and I'm not trying to name drop, but Scott Cook started into it. And through a friend, I had the opportunity of spending 30 minutes with Scott. And Scott is the one that taught me a lot about the danger of an MVP. He said, Todd, if you say MVP, you encourage to build a product.
Yeah.
He said, what I want to do is build an understanding first.
Oh man.
And you think, oh. And so, like, these aren't my original ideas. I just think about how to apply them.
Yeah.
And so, you're right. If you can get to the fact that you define innovation as a behavior, it's just like the Coach Ryan. He wanted a standard behavior to drive winning outcomes. Even if you look at Indiana football this year, I think they're another example of a system, and you put people in a great system and their organizations perform. Not only do they perform, but look what the organization did. So that's how I think about whether it's healthcare or if it's Cisco or if it's GE building big iron. It's a system that's the most important thing to do to let people thrive.
Okay, so now let's get into you mentioned in the show description there's a major healthcare transformation opportunity in front of
Mm-hmm.
us.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that and what it takes to execute it successfully?
Yeah. So we mentioned it a little when I was hinting to it. The Center for Medicare declared acute kidney injury a hospital harm. And it's a rarely understood term by patients. Their doctors understand it, but as far as measuring at a system level, it's not as commonplace as it's about to be. So, this is the way I think about the Medicare organization. They don't declare something a harm without this unbelievable corpus of data that
Mm.
really smart mathematicians are looking at to say there's a signal in that we need to address. In August of 24, they said acute kidney injury is a hospital acquired harm, just like a fall, just like a catheter acquired urinary tract infection, just like a bed pressure ulcer. Serum creatinine in the blood test, like we talked about, it misses up to 40% of those. But in 2024, there were 3.2 million acute kidney injuries. That's one every 10 seconds.
Wow.
You have a 40% chance in a heart operation of getting an acute kidney injury as a patient. If you get one, you're 5 times more likely to have chronic kidney disease the rest of your life. The reason I think it's one of the grandest opportunities is because it happens every 10 seconds. CMS has declared it a harm, and there are going to be financial penalties to hospitals. But at the core of healthcare, and I worked inside of health systems for 14 years, I will tell you there is an underlying common thread of empathy and care for people. And so I think when you harness that empathy and care that clinical teams have and the passion that hospitals have against looming penalties, that it's one of the greatest types of ingredient combination for transformation that there is. Because people want to do well by you. Do no harm is a thing. CMS is saying we're going to penalize you for it. And then the people at the front line, they're some of the most amazing humans. And so I think we have to give them the tools and the systems to deliver the care they aspire to. And that's why Accuryn really exists, is just to serve the clinical teams who serve the people. and then let all the good stuff come because of that. That's why I think it's one of the largest things. It happens every 10 seconds. Can you imagine?
That's incredible. And why is it caused? I mean, why do they? You mentioned the bed sores, for example. Is
Hmm.
it? Do they declare it? I forget. I'm sorry what that term was. The
Mm.
hospital related injury. Is it? It's just simply because it's not being tested. There's not a test for it.
There's a test for it. There's stages of acute kidney injury, and it's defined by this group called Kidney Disease Improving Global Outcomes. If you get to stage two with serum creatinine, your kidneys are in trouble. And that's where CMS is saying there are going to be penalties for stage two or stage three. There's already a penalty if a patient goes to dialysis who didn't have dialysis coming in. That's already a problem for hospitals and, of course, for the patient. I think what CMS says, we realize you can't do a lot for the onset of acute kidney injury because of nephrotoxic drugs and surgeries. But what we're saying is you need to prevent the deterioration of the kidney's performance.
Okay.
And the urine tells you way before the blood. And so I think it's very fair for CMS to say, this isn't working for patients or for the industry. Figure out a way to get ahead of the problem. And clinicians are saying we need tools to get ahead of the problem that are better than what we have today. That's why it's just a really interesting time for transformation driven through the behavior of innovation.
Okay. So this has been fantastic to get this one slice out of ways we can transform the healthcare industry
Mm,
in one segment. I'm going to ask you to kind of take us
mm,
home here a little bit and challenge you a little bit with this
mm,
question because it it's almost universal to talk to people about, and this
mm,
is similar to education. Like, man, our healthcare system is broken.
mm.
Um, we have this great. We all know we have the best doctors and tools here in the United States, but it seems like we spend so much money, and yet our care, everybody has a
Yeah,
complaint about it. It seems like.
yeah.
What do you think, Todd? I mean, even just I don't know. Where do you think we could possibly change things to get ourselves
Mm.
back on track, um, just from a big picture perspective? And it's kind of a put you on the spot, and it might be a really tough question, but I'm sure you've
Mm.
thought about it a lot.
That's a beautiful question. Be active. I think if we can, I know it's talked about a lot, Greg, but I think about the healthcare system only accounts for, depending on who you read, 20% to 30% of a population's health. And if you look at how many people have chronic or chronic diseases, they say at least 70% of chronic diseases are preventable. And so, how do we help each other? And this is the way I feel about it. Forget the hospital system, forget CMS, go to the root of humanity. How do we see a friend who's not taking good care of themselves and pull them aside and say, you know what? I care about you. Let's go on a walk together.
Mm-hmm.
Versus sitting on the couch and hiring a big soda and a bag of chips. Hey, let's go take a walk in the park and play speed chess. I think it's going to take us putting our arms around each other in an empathetic and caring way, not like, hey, dude, but in a caring way to change the course of chronic diseases, which are the biggest cost to our system by far. It's a very simplistic answer, but I believe if we did it, if each of us just chose one other person who we know is headed down a bad health path and just care for them and talk to them and be active with them, we could change the course of healthcare.
You know, I had a great guest on the last show just talking about depression. I've done a lot of reading about, healthy relationships, marital relationships. And what's kind of intriguing now, what you just brought up is like, it seems like for these major, incredibly huge problems,
Mhm,
there's these little simple solutions.
mhm,
And they're
mhm.
like we overcomplicate things sometimes, I believe. And if we can just apply that human behavior and make these slight adjustments, we can see some pretty enormous impacts.
Yeah, I think empathy is the heartbeat of health. It's definitely the heartbeat of healthcare, the people on the front lines, but I also think it's the heartbeat of health because when we care about our neighbor and our friends, then we can lift each other. We don't need to put the burden on the hospitals or CMS or insurance companies to own that. We can do that too. You made a beautiful point. We can do that with the simple, small acts consistently, just like the Badger coach did every day. If we just choose something to do nice for someone toward better health, we'll change it.
Maybe, Todd, it's time to redefine the first responders, is make us the first responders
Mm-hmm,
and make the healthcare people the second. So,
mm-hmm.
uh, boy, this has been a fantastic
Oh,
conversation,
that's
Todd.
so nice.
Yeah, really enjoyed learning from you. And if someone wants to learn more about Accuryn and what you folks are doing, how do they get a
Mm-hmm.
hold of you?
T Dunn, TDUNN at Accuryn.com, ACCURYN.com, or just ping me on LinkedIn. I love learning and meeting people. So either way, I would be honored for anyone to reach out.
Okay. We are all rooting for you and Accuryn to help everybody out in this with this emerging problem, a problem that's been there for a while. And thank you again for joining us today, Todd. And hold on just after we end the stream here for a second.
I'm honored to talk to you. Thanks, Greg.
Sure. And thank you, everyone, for joining us in another episode of Thought Leaders Live.